I do have a little bit of advice to give yourself time. If the worst happens and your loved one dies, it's not going to be a couple of weeks. It's not going to be a couple of months necessarily. It's going to just, you've got to give yourself time. It literally took me months to catch up on sleep and to feel like myself again.
Cancer is just something that we all have to recognize, acknowledge, cope with, live with, struggle with, rage upon, crush, and even thrive with. This show is more than knowing and fighting or beating cancer. It's more than just relaying science, hope, and technology. Together, our purpose is to demystify cancer, take away as much fear out of the diagnosis, treatment, and process as we can, defeat its grip on our lives. This is The Cancering Show. Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Cancering Show. I am so excited to come to you. This is episode 50. I will tell you, as this airs, I will be within days of my 49th birthday, which if you're counting correctly, that means starting my 50th year on this earth. And 50 really feels like a big milestone. And to come this far with all of you on this cancering journey just really means a lot. This particular episode is, I'm not going to lie, it's a tearjerker, but it is just so meaningful to me. I can't wait to share it with you. Michelle Matthews-Irvin is a woman with a very unique perspective on cancer. Her husband, Matt, was diagnosed with a brain cancer known as glioblastoma and passed away in 2023. She's been incredibly open about their journey, the ups and downs, the tears and the laughter through her Facebook posts, her journaling, and sharing that with her community. She talked to us about the overwhelming show of support from friends, coworkers, and the community. And Michelle is joining us on Zoom today. You might hear her guest star, her bird, Conan O'Brien, occasionally in the background. And also, I sound a little different. We are both Zooming in today due to inclement weather here in Mobile, Alabama. But we wanted to do whatever we could to get you this interview. It's just so important, and can't wait for you to hear more from Michelle Matthews. Michelle, welcome to The Cancering Show.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Michelle, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Well, I work as a feature writer for AL.com and This Is Alabama, which is a wonderful job and has enabled me to write a lot of stories about inspiring people over the years. Also, in addition to my work, I live in Midtown and I have two sons who are 20 and 23. So I'm an empty nester right now.
And tell us about Matt. How did y'all meet? What was he like?
Well, I love talking about Matt. Matt and I met on my very first day of working I had gotten a new job in 2005. And on my very first day of walking into the newsroom at the Press Register, one of my coworkers was Matt and just seemed like the nicest guy. We hit it off. Everyone loved him. And little did I know that 10 years later, we would get married. So at the time, we were both married to other people, and I had two little boys, and you just never know where life is going to take you. I had to make some notes that I didn't want to forget to tell you about Matt. He grew up here in Mobile, and his father actually worked at the Press Register in the advertising department. So the newspaper was a big deal. Yeah, a big deal in his family. And his siblings can remember going to work with their dad on Saturday mornings. He would always go to catch up on stuff, and they would walk down to the library and just they loved the Press Register building there on Government Street. And even Matt kind of had that in his blood. And he worked there for almost 31 years until he was a victim of the layoffs in 2012 when the newspaper stopped daily publication. And so he actually went on to find a job as an editor at Elevator World magazine here in Mobile. And so he worked a few more years doing that. But I wanted to just say that he was beloved in the newsroom. Everyone loved Matt. For his kindness. I had to write these down. Because I don't want to miss anything, but his good judgment, his laid back attitude, his sense of fairness, his journalism skills. He was just all around great. One of the most popular. He really was one of the most popular people in the newsroom in his very quiet way. And he was very intellectually curious. He did not travel a lot, but he knew so many things. He knew so so much about so many things that I always told him he should have been on Jeopardy. He was a great trivia player, but he was I think he was too shy to actually try out. But he could have been a contender for that. And he did crossword puzzles in ink. And that's another thing about him that was so confident that he could do that.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I could go on and on, but basically that's Matt in a nutshell.
I love that. I love those descriptions, kind of so specific, but it gives you such a clear picture of him. And take us back to that diagnosis, kind of what happened. How did this all come to be?
It was a huge shock. And as you probably know, I mean, brain tumors present in many different ways. We never dreamed that what was going on with Matt would be cancer.
Right.
I would say in January of 2021, we had survived 2020. And on New Year's Eve, I had opened the front door. I've never done that before, like open the front door and open the back door, trying to let all the bad juju out, and didn't know what was coming right behind that. So in January, as I said, he was a word person. So he was working at Elevator World, and I didn't really notice this, but he had stopped doing his crossword puzzles, and he started having problems remembering words, and it was really freaking him out. Like one day he came home and it was a story from USA Today. It wasn't even very complicated, and he could not make sense of it. And I remember it was like a profile of Justice Alito, and I'm reading through it with him, like, what don't you understand? And he's like, it just doesn't make sense. So that was very weird. And one night we went together to pick up food at Mellow Mushroom, and he went in and couldn't think of the word pretzels when they asked him what he had ordered. Just little things like that were really bothering him, and we knew something was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to his doctor, and he did all the tests for, things that we thought it might be early onset dementia, Alzheimer's, something like that. None of those things. So he finally did blood work, and then finally ordered an MRI. And it was on the MRI. When they read that, we had to go back to the doctor immediately. And it ended up not being his doctor was off that day. So we saw a doctor we had never seen before. And she's the one who looked him. She was so compassionate and so kind, but she's the one who's dropped the bomb. You have a brain tumor. And those words just hung over us all the way home that day. It was just surreal. And it still seems surreal all this time later. But we didn't know. Matt asked her, does that mean I have cancer? And she said, well, we won't know until there's a biopsy, but it looks like primary brain cancer. And so when we came home, I Googled it without Matt knowing. I Googled primary brain cancer. And when I saw the word glioblastoma, I just slammed the computer shut, because I'd heard of that. So a couple of people I'd done stories about, one of them in particular had glioblastoma, because I had to look it up to make sure I spelled it correctly. And I thought, please, God, don't let that be what this is. He had never heard of it and didn't know what that kind of went over his head at the time. And so, just maybe 3 days later, he had to have craniotomy. The doctor asked us if we knew of a neurosurgeon. We didn't know any neurosurgeons.
Yeah,
I just said, please give us the best one. Just please recommend the best one. And she did. And he was a fantastic surgeon, and he got as much of it as he possibly could. But it's my understanding, it's very difficult to get good margins in the brain, because, you're taking out, and especially because, Matt's tumor was the size of a golf ball, and it was on his left temporal lobe, very close to his speech center. So that made sense, why he was having trouble with words. He did not have pain. I don't think he ever really had a headache. He didn't have seizures or any of the other things that so many people have that clue you in. It was all just the terrible irony of the word issue with him.
Right.
And so we had to wait a couple of weeks after his surgery to find out what it was. And Matt was feeling so good. And he had started, it was like once that pressure or whatever was out of his brain, a lot of things came back. And he started reading this novel that a friend gave us. It was like 1,000 pages long. And when we went in to have his staples removed, that's when we were going to find out what was going on. And I remember he looked at me and he was like, it was a beautiful, beautiful spring day. And he was like, there's no way I have cancer, because we had been told it was possibly benign. So we were hopeful that it was anything but glioblastoma. And as the surgeon removed the staples, he told Matt that it was glioblastoma, and that, and Matt said, well, is it like what Jimmy Carter has? The kind of brain cancer Jimmy Carter has? And he's like, no, it's more like, Beau Biden, or that was devastating.
Yeah.
Talk about surreal. I mean, because then we were shuffled off to an oncologist. We didn't get to choose the person. We just met with her and learned a little bit more. And it was all terribly depressing to learn that he had a terminal illness. I meant to say he was 62 at the time, and also a very active and healthy 62-year-old. I mean, he took no medications regularly, and he was told that would be in his favor.
I so appreciate you giving us that clear picture. And I think so often patients and their families are left kind of, just like you said, with this kind of cloud hanging over them. Is it or isn't it? Is the knife going to fall? And if it is cancer, then what? And whether or not to Google, whether or not to learn more or wait, just to pause for a moment in that setting. Do you feel like you did the right thing to just wait and hold that space for healing, for time, for the joy of those words coming back? Was that the right choice for y'all?
It definitely was. And also, after we found out that it was glioblastoma, I did things like, I did Google. I would read as much as I could. But I did not share a lot of that with Matt, because I felt that, knowing, he, from the beginning, when he heard that it was, like, he never really used the word terminal. I think he had so much determination, and, he really wanted to be an outlier from the beginning. And, I was amazed, because one of the things that I would not have described Matt as would have been brave. And I think it's just because I'd never seen him tested that way. But he really was so courageous in this. And he had so much faith just in the medical community, in me to take care of him, in God and the universe, that this would somehow work out. And so in some ways, it really was a beautiful thing to witness. And I didn't want to ruin that for him. And you have to have hope. And we found a lot of hope.
Yeah. Tell us about that journey to find that hope.
Yeah. I think it was because of a lot of things, but the genetic markers, the timing of his, he immediately had 30 days of chemo, the standard of care, 30 days of chemo and radiation. And we did that immediately. And I think we talked to doctors at Duke about immunotherapy and some other interesting things that they had going on. But unfortunately, the fact that he had already had radiation was against him. And then just the timing, like if he had found out just a couple of weeks earlier, he could have gotten in to a trial that they had going on. But that never worked for us. However, when I found out, I had posted about Matt, I had posted something on Facebook, because I am one of those people. I'm pretty open on Facebook. Matt was very private, but I felt the need to let people know what was going on with him. When they found the brain tumor, if nothing else, I really wanted people to pray for us and send him positive thoughts to get through that.
Yeah.
And so I did. And when I read Matt, the comments of strangers to him, there were people I went to college with, people I know who he doesn't know, saying the most wonderful things for him. And he sat there and cried. And I thought, I'm going to keep doing this, because this is right. This is powerful. And so I posted about about it being GBM. And I heard from a friend of mine from childhood. It's one of those, you have all these friends on Facebook from all these different places. I had not seen her in so many years, but she lives in Atlanta now. And she sent me a message saying that her investment advisor has glioblastoma and is like a 16-year survivor. And she said she loves to talk to people about her journey. And I was like, please, that's what I need. I don't need right. Hearing median survival rate 12 to 18 months. I can't hear that kind of stuff anymore. And so I did talk to her friend, and her friend of course, again, very different. There were a lot of things about her case that were different from Matt's, but she had been treated at Duke at their brain tumor center. Well, until that moment, I had no idea there was such a thing as a brain tumor center. It was all part of this learning process. And all I thought was, she kept telling me over and over, you have to get him to Duke. And I kept thinking, how in the world are we going to do that? Like I work, he works. How will we do it? And somehow we did do it. And we did get in touch with Duke, and we saw this wonderful neuro-oncologist. And when we changed from the oncologist we originally did not like to Dr. Brian Persing at MCI's, that was a huge game changer for us. We loved him. I think he loved Matt. He got a kick out of Matt. He spent so much time with us, and he was very honest about the fact that he said a lot of people in Mobile will tell you that they're experts on glioblastoma, but there are none really. And he thought it was doing the right thing by going to Duke and seeing a specialist there. And he was excited about the opportunity to learn from them. And so he was awesome.
I was just going to say, I think as oncologists, being humble enough to say that there are always things that we don't see that commonly, whether you're a specialist or subspecialist, there are still things that are still truly rare. And there are opportunities in some of the larger centers. What I always say to my patients is absolutely, you can go for a second opinion right away. And we encourage that. We talk about that on the show as well. But also, there are times when I'll tell you, listen, you're going to get the standard of care in, 99 cancer centers out of 100 in this country. You don't need to go. And then I'll be the first to tell you, you need to go. We are, at our out of options here, what we can offer here, but there's this trial there that, really could have an impact. So we always try and, look at those options. And I think it's really good for patients to know.
Yeah. If nothing else, I mean, when we were at Duke, they've got this real big focus on hope. And I think there was something about that journey that we made every couple of months to, we'd have his MRI done down here, and then we would travel 10 hours or more to up there and stay there for a couple of days so that he could see his doctor. And also even they had other resources like counselors, and it was very helpful. And it really helped us maintain our hope, because we felt like every time she looked at his MRI that she could see things that sometimes she would disagree with the radiologist up there. And we always believed whatever she told us. She was the boss, and Dr. Persing did too, really. So Duke was important to us, even if in the end there was nothing that they could do to save his life. I don't regret at all that we tried everything we could. I felt like I really truly did feel that we did everything we could.
No. I was just going to say, I think that that's such an important component of a fight like this, that you really feel like you've done everything that you could.
Yes. In the end, I really believe we did. And he lived, I don't want to get to that, quite yet, but he did live for 2 years and 3 months. And so I feel like his life was possibly extended a little bit just from that hope that we could really keep going.
There's a lot of research to support that having a sense of hope, having a good support team. And I will tell you, there's research to support being open about your journey and allowing people to support you, and having a sense of faith and comfort in prayer, regardless of the, religion of choice or meditation or higher power. Having that sense of faith, all of those play into survivorship and not to be discounted.
Yes, for sure. And really that support, from the beginning, Matt named me the captain of Team Matt. So that was my role. And my whole motto was, truly, whatever Matt wants, Matt gets. And that was difficult because Matt didn't want a lot. I mean, he really didn't. So I had to really try to do things that were special for him. And, just as simple as, there was a period where we ate Toll House cookies every night. We would each have 2, hot, melty Toll House cookies, because there's a lot out there that can scare you about diet and things like that. But Dr. Persing and even Dr. Desjardins in Durham had both told me, let him have what he wants within moderation. Let him have what he wants. It's a quality of life issue. We want to give him the best quality of life possible. So, I did, of course, try to, feed him healthy foods, but we did indulge a little bit there for sure. And he wasn't even a big fan of sweets, but he had kind of gotten hooked on them. And another thing is that I realized, thankfully I did, like back in 2021, after he had his surgery, after he went through chemo and radiation and he did oral chemo always. And when he started the Timidar and his regular routine, we had during 2020, when so many things were canceled, and Matt and I were supposed to go to New York City in April for his work. And of course, the conference he was supposed to cover was canceled. Neither of us had ever been there, and we had been so excited. So in the summer of 21, when he was doing so well and back to, reading, doing his crossword puzzles, back to work, which he didn't even have to be. I mean, he had a terminal diagnosis. He could have quit. He refused to quit working. So I noticed that Bruce Springsteen, who was Matt's favorite, was doing his, Broadway show again. And I think he was the first to, come back to Broadway. And I looked, and there was a show on Matt's 63rd birthday on July 1st. And I did not have the money for that. But I just finally thought, YOLO. You only live once. We're going. So we made memories doing that. He was so tired, but he managed to still go like 10,000 steps a day. We had the best time, and he got to see so many things, and I'll never regret that, of course. And that ended up, and then I took him to a lot of other concerts, shows, whatever I thought he would enjoy. And again, nothing really crazy. Sadly, we couldn't go on any really big trips, but that was another thing. I had friends who started a GoFundMe for us just because I had been to lunch with one of them one day, and they were talking about this great trip they had made out west, and they had gone on Route 66. And I thought how much Matt would enjoy that. And they, unbeknownst to me, decided that we should go and put together a GoFundMe, and it raised enough money that we could go on such a trip. But actually by that point, Matt really wasn't able to do something quite that adventurous. So we did some smaller things. Like we did go to a mountain cabin for a week in Ellijay, Georgia, and had a really, really nice, quiet time. But, the things people did for us were really unbelievable. Not just that, but,
Amazing.
Gift cards and things from people.
Yeah.
People we don't even know very well were just doing everything they could to help us. And it was amazing.
And I think it's so special that you let them in to share in that journey. Ultimately, we know that you lost Matt. And, somebody said once, and I think it's so true, that, in the olden days, they used to drape the house in black and the family wore black. And those things can seem really heavy and depressing, but it tells people to treat you gently. And I'm just curious, kind of, how are you doing a year later?
Well, I'm doing really well. I should start it by saying that. I really am. I thought I would hate living here alone. I dreaded dinner time because I always, we sat across the table from each other. He loved my cooking always. From before he was sick, that was like our thing for me to feed Matt, try new recipes on Matt. I dreaded eating dinner. And I have a friend who said, you know what? I cook every night. You're going to start coming to my house once a week. And so every Thursday I go to Jenny's house and eat with them. And that is like my favorite night of the week. And Jenny and I, after dinner, we sit around and talk and we've gotten closer than ever because we had that time. And, so just something simple like that has done so much for me. And I think that I blocked out a lot, especially the very last 6 months were pretty terrible. And they really were. And when I look back at when I read what I wrote at the time, I'm a writer. So I did think I need to keep a journal, and I wasn't super faithful about it. But I love that I did what I did because those details are there that, not that you really want to be reminded of the bad things, but it makes me think, my God, I look at myself as almost a character and like, wow, look what she went through. Because I know Matt was the patient, but I went through so much. There was so much anticipatory grieving, which was something I didn't even know existed, but I lost him so slowly. I lost him over the 2 years. So that when he was gone, it was more adjusting to life without him for real. I've tried to do things like say yes to people who invite me to go places. I do things. I go and take salsa lessons, or I go on a road trip. I do things. And that has helped me a lot too. So he's not here anymore. And I'm not saying that I feel like I need to live for him, but I need to live. I need to live. I want to grow old. That didn't get the chance to. And I want to grow old and have a great life. And so that's what I'm trying to do.
I think you're doing pretty amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Michelle, I just so appreciate you being so open and raw with us and really showing your incredible bravery in the face of all of this. And I so appreciate you sharing with our listeners. Is there any advice you would give to spouses or caregivers who are cancering every day with their loved one?
I do have a little bit of advice. And one is to give yourself time. I feel like it literally took me months to catch up on sleep and to feel like myself again. And I had to just kind of, I almost felt like it was like when I had babies and there were, you're so caught up in taking care of them. I mean, I guess it's taking care of anybody. You neglect yourself. And so just don't expect if the worst happens and your loved one dies, don't expect it's not going to be a couple of weeks. It's not going to be a couple of months necessarily. It's you've got to give yourself time. Also, I look back at what I wrote in my journal. I've already mentioned how important journaling is, and just don't neglect to write down your thoughts and your experiences. And then when you look back, you'll feel amazed at what you went through. Yet at the same time, another piece of advice I have is to try to live in the now and when you're going through it, and appreciate all the phases of this person's life. Even when Matt was in hospice, he was basically unable to speak, and I'm not sure if he knew really what was going on. I tried to tell him what was going on. And one day, like about 4 days before he died, he puckered up his lips and told me to give him a kiss. And I did. And I asked him I said, "Do you love me?" And he said, "Yes, I love you." And he said, he spelled out, "I love you," but he couldn't spell it. But I knew what he was trying to spell. And it was just the sweetest thing. Cause, so even that I appreciate so much. But my last piece of advice is to stay away from the sort of gloom and doom that you find in online groups. I right away had found a couple of groups for caregivers of glioblastoma patients and for glioblastoma patients. I never had Matt sign up for one of those, but I would look at them, and they were very scary. There were videos there that, I don't mean scary, but but you have to realize that every person's experience is different. And, just because there are a lot of stories about things that happen to people with glioblastoma that don't always happen, that didn't happen with Matt. So, my mother encouraged me. She was like, "Michelle, if you put your hand on a hot stove and it burned you, why would you continue to put your hand on that stove?" And it was so true. I was like, you're right. I can't look at this stuff anymore. It became a little bit more helpful again toward the end, I think, because I could look specifically for like hospice or whatever topic, and not just also take on other people's emotional burdens. I could not get caught up in other people's drama and big issues they were going through when I was going through my own. You just can't, it's just not good for you. So, I would advise, I think that they might be good for some advice. I actually found a friend here in Mobile, whose husband had just died of glioblastoma. My doctor hooked me up with her, gave me her phone number, and we became fast friends and went to lunch several times. and her husband died before Matt did, and we were there for each other. And we didn't know we're close in age. Would never have met if it hadn't been for my doctor sort of setting us up. But she was, having a friend like that who was going through the same thing. I know everyone can't find someone like that, but it was amazing. And we would hug, hold each other, and tell each other we loved each other. So that was really special too.
And I think, it's always worth asking. I will tell you, I have hooked up 2 patients who were moms who lost a child within a 3-month window. And,
Wow.
I knew that about both of them. And I knew one mother was further along in the journey, and the other patient was really grieving and struggling. And I asked the other, kind of more healing journey mom first, and she said yes, of course. And and they would never have met, and really were there for each other. I think it's always worth asking your physician, whether it's your primary care doctor or your oncologist. And I do think those kind of almost mentor relationships, but like you said, you were there for her too. And nobody knows what you're going through more than somebody who's going through the exact same thing.
Yes, it's so true. So true.
Michelle, you talked about Matt continuing to work. What about you? I'm so curious if you were able to continue working, how much time you took off, and what you would recommend to other folks.
I'm really glad you asked me that, because I was so lucky, first of all, to work from home. I had already worked from home, but during the pandemic, we all were doing that, and we at Alabama Media Group did not go back. So we did not go back to the office. So I was home with him, or even without him. I was here at home when he would go off to work at Elevator World. But that enabled me to take him, drive him to work when he couldn't drive anymore. I took his lunch to him every day. But also, even when I was working, I have to say my editor was so good to me and did not expect the same amount of work that I had done before. And we talked she's remote too in North Alabama. And so we would talk every week, and it would become more like a therapy session. She was unbelievably kind and empathetic, and I was so lucky with that. I did use, all my vacation time, but they added, I think last year, 2 weeks of caregiver leave. So I used every bit of that. So that was great too. And I was very lucky in every way. I even, I told you earlier, I think, that I write kind of inspirational stories. I've spoken to so many people who've been through cancer. I've spoken to caregivers, not solely those people, but I've done so many of those types of stories, and they really kind of let me off of those. If I wanted to do a touching story, I could, but if I wanted to edit other people's work, they let me do that. So it was really, really nice. It worked out great.
I think just, allowing yourself to get that help and to be willing to step back and having, options to be flexible, is such a great point. And I know you said that you kind of documented a lot of your Matt's journey on Facebook. Is there a way that people could follow you or learn more about that and hear more about that story?
Absolutely. I think I still, I in Facebook memories, some of those posts will come up and I reshare them. Not every time, but certainly last week was the 1-year anniversary of his death. And so I reshared a post from Matt, but I have so many of those, that are on Facebook, and I really need to do something with that stuff, I think, because people were so moved by our story and really made me feel like even though I know we had something special, they made it feel like it was even like this unbelievable love story. And I love that, just from reading my posts about him. And I always tried to be very considerate of Matt, knowing how private he was, but still to tell the truth, but also to try to tell it in a positive way, not to be fake. It was still real, but I tried to share the most positive things I could. Yeah, you can certainly follow me. I'm it's Michelle Irvin, Irvin. And then in parentheses, it says Michelle Matthews, because I kind of use both names in the world. So I would be happy to have people follow me or friend me or whatever.
Well, Michelle, I cannot thank you enough for sharing Matt with us, for sharing your experience.
Oh, I'm so glad. I do love to talk about him, and I sure did love him, and he loved me. And even though we were married, he died a week before our 8th anniversary, which was yesterday. And yesterday I had forgotten. I didn't realize what the date was. I was out of town, and I was looking at my Facebook memories, and of course that showed me what day it was. And I found the sweetest. Like I said, he was very private, and he did not post a lot on Facebook, but he had posted on our first anniversary, that I was the love of his life, and that it was a picture of us at a Mardi Gras parade. And he said, I made every day feel like Mardi Gras. And it just, I'm glad that we had that. Not everyone has that kind of love. And even though it didn't last long enough, as I said, I knew him for 18 years. So even though it was the last 14 or so that we were romantically involved. But I was very lucky and lucky to love him to the very end. I was with him at the very last breath, and what an honor.
You are amazing. Can't think of a better place to put this conversation on hold. I really hope we can check in again with you.
Oh, I would love that. Thank you so much.
Ooh, that was amazing. Michelle and her love story with Matt is so just inspirational and helps you believe in true love and finding the person you're meant to be with, and that her story and his story do live on. And I hope you all enjoyed that as much as I did, in terms of just being a witness to their experience. And I think she had some amazing advice for caregivers and those who are cancering with loved ones, some really pertinent advice, whether that is, seeking that second opinion or that national level of expertise, finding an oncologist that you really relate to, and enjoying the small moments, taking those pieces of joy, taking the trip, doing the things. And then, of course, in that time, after a loved one passes, to take the time to heal and recover in the same way that you would recover from any time where you weren't able to take care of yourself. So I think some really amazing advice there. I hope you all take something away from that story. I know I will carry it with me always, especially when she said that she was going to live her life to continue to celebrate the love that she and Matt had. And I'll always carry that with me. Thank you again for joining us for this show, and we look forward to having you back next time. Until then, keep cancering and take care of yourself.
Thanks again for listening. And don't forget to submit your questions at www.cancering.com. We're here for all of those questions, and we'll get you the answers. This show is brought to you by the University of South Alabama Mitchell Cancer Institute. MCI is a cutting-edge cancer research and patient center built to fight cancer smarter in Mobile and Baldwin County, Alabama. Our researchers and clinicians focus daily on the struggle against cancer, serving a potential catchment population of more than 4.1 million people, with a singular focus of advancing cancer diagnosis, treatment, and prevention throughout the Gulf Coast and beyond, with science, technology, and hope. Want to know more about the Mitchell Cancer Institute? Visit us at usamci.com or search for us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Mitchell Cancer Institute is a member of USA Health. To learn more about all of our hospitals, clinics, and services, visit usahealthsystem.com.